It's Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Granthermes. Today on the show, I'm going to talk about the meeting between Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska over the weekend, the shocking press conference after that summit, and the very odd White House meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders that Trump had yesterday, as he continues to show a real affinity for Putin and Russia while also trying to claim he's going to end the war in Ukraine. But first, make sure you're following or subscribe to the show, whatever podcast app you listen to it on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube, and sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack. It is just $5 a month. You get access to all sorts of bonus content there. And as always, share the show on social media. It's Mims News Pod. That's MIMS News Pod, all one word on every platform. I am at Granthermes on Twitter and Bluesky, and at Granthermes TV on everything else. All right, let's get to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. You know, as we head into this last month of the summer, the school year is on the way, or it started for many of us already, and that means a return to stressful schedules and hectic lives, or honestly just the news with the way that it's been. If you're like me, you're looking for a way to just unwind. With Cozy Earth, you can transform your space, whatever it is, into an elevated haven where serenity and renewal intertwine effortlessly. I really like their bamboo sheets. They keep me cool, especially in these dog days of summer. And I really like their luxe robe. I'm a robe guy. I know, say what you will, but these are about as good as it gets. I'll even avoid planning things on the weekend just to spend a little bit more time in this robe. Now, Cozy Earth's products are a favorite among many celebrities. Kris Jenner praises their bamboo sheets as her nightly essential, raving about their softness and cooling comfort. And for 7 consecutive years, Oprah has included Cozy Earth on her favorite things list with free shipping on orders over $50, a 100-night sleep trial, and a 10-year warranty. Cozy Earth will bring lasting luxury and comfort into your home. Visit CozyEarth.com and use the exclusive 40% off code for Make It Make Sense, MIMS25, that's MIMS25. It's good for any purchase, and it's the best deal, and it cannot be found anywhere else but here on Make It Make Sense. Now, Make It Make Sense does get a cut of that sale, but, you know, it keeps the show going. It puts you in some new sheets or towels, and it keeps me in my favorite robe. Again, visit CozyEarth.com and use the code MIMS25 for 40% off. Wrap the ones you love in luxury with Cozy Earth. Okay, let's get back to the show. On Friday last week, Donald Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Now, I talked a lot about how and why Russia was an odd choice for this meeting for a lot of reasons in the Thursday episode, but not least of which, that Putin has been signaling for years now that Alaska is somehow Russian by heritage in the way that Ukraine is. But we need to talk about what actually happened as Putin arrived before we can talk about the summit itself. Trump literally rolled out the red carpet for the Russian dictator. He excitedly stood and waited for Putin to come to him, even applauding Putin at one point. This is just not something an American president does. I mean, imagine if Obama or Biden had done this to another leader on American soil. It's not like they were meeting at some sort of European or Asian summit. This was inside U.S. borders. People would have lost their minds. And Putin made the president wait for him, like a teenager in a tux waiting for the prom date to come down the stairs. The two had a photo op as well where Trump walked Putin to a podium backed by American flags. It even gave Putin a military flyover, something we don't normally expect a person who has an arrest warrant out for them from The Hague after being accused of war crimes to get while meeting with the president of the United States. It was really, really bizarre, but not as bizarre as the press conference after this meeting. It was only about 12 minutes long, so much, much shorter than these things normally are, and especially with someone like Trump, who tends to speak for quite a long time. He didn't. Putin spoke first and spoke for the majority of this press conference. Again, upstaging the American president on U.S. soil. Trump, the entire time during this press conference, essentially looked like he was toggling somewhere between sheepishness, something he doesn't normally do, and then a sense of awe when it came to being next to Putin. And in his remarks, which were sort of rambly, he tried to find some common ground with Putin in a way you wouldn't normally expect an American president to do in this situation. Here's a bit of that.
Fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all, but we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax, but what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with.
So, again, the Russia hoax in the 2016 election, 9 years ago, an election which, by the way, Trump won, isn't a hoax. Vladimir Putin admitted the last time these two met one-on-one in 2018 that he did, in fact, interfere in the U.S. election in order to help Trump, and he said he would do it again. But I think the important thing here is the way Trump ended this press conference, again, speaking for maybe a quarter of the time that Putin did, which in terms of just who held the floor, for most of it, it would kind of make this Putin's press conference in the U.S., not the other way around. And Trump, the entire time, who looked a little sweaty, a little haggard, even a little disheveled, rambled on like a boxer who got held against the ropes until he had to throw the towel in.
We had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all.
So that is not the way a president talks if the meetings went well. Because remember last week, Trump said if he didn't walk away with a ceasefire, at least promise from Putin, there would be severe consequences against Russia. Well, Putin walked Trump away from calling for a ceasefire, and there are no consequences. Putin called Trump's bluff. But then there was this from NBC's White House correspondent Peter Alexander, who talked about seeing high-level staffers, including the press secretary and Trump's special diplomat to oversee the war in Ukraine, Steve Witkoff, come in and out of the meeting room.
Just pulling back the curtain here, what struck me, Jen, in particular was really just the looks on the faces of a lot of the American delegation here. Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, Steve Witkoff, who came into the room, then left quickly, then came back in. Leavitt appeared to be a bit stressed out, anxious. Their eyes were wide, almost ashen at times. Those were some of the sort of images that will stick with me as we leave here. This was not the way the president likes to do things. He likes to be the producer of this presidency. He got that in the first half of the day, but when he was behind closed doors with Vladimir Putin, it looks like he didn't come away with anything that he claimed he wanted. He said he'd go home unhappy if there was no ceasefire. They didn't declare one here today.
Eyes wide and ashen are not ways you describe people who are having a good go of things. That is how you describe people who've just witnessed a deadly car crash. And we don't know what was said in the meeting to make them act that way or look that way, but it's a scary bit of reporting, which was quickly followed by the fact that potentially sensitive documents about the meeting were left in a hotel printer where anyone, specifically Russian agents, could find them. Now, they're just things like the rundown of the meeting, a who's who page, the seating chart for lunch, and what was for lunch. We also learned that Trump gave Putin a bald eagle death statue. It's a common thing to exchange gifts at these kinds of meetings, but the papers were found by hotel guests, and it suggests a level of sloppiness or unpreparedness around this meeting, which was already extremely unorthodox, to say the least, and then quickly seemed to go off the rails. And so if they were approaching just lunch this way, what was it like in the meeting room is the question. But I do want to go back to the ceasefire idea here because it's important to understand what the difference between a ceasefire and a peace deal is. Ukraine wants a ceasefire deal so a lasting peace can be worked toward without the threat of more bombings and death. They don't want to essentially negotiate under threat. Russia doesn't want that. Putin says he wants peace, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but he doesn't want to stop the fighting while peace talks happen. That's because he wants to take as much land as possible in Ukraine because he knows that he can bend Trump into setting the terms of Ukraine giving up some of their country, a thing that Ukraine absolutely doesn't want to do. And we know Trump is already thinking about some sort of land swap, as he called it during a press conference just a week ago. But he was also caught on a hot mic talking about a trilateral summit, or a trilat, so tri meaning 3 countries at the table. He was talking to French President Emmanuel Macron about that at the meeting with Zelensky and European leaders over the weekend. And it's worth hearing, but I know it's a little hard to understand, so just hang with me.
To set up a trilat, so.
And where do you want to do
I
it?
think he wants to make I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand? I think as crazy as it sounds. Just sit down. Sit down, everybody.
So in case you couldn't catch all that, Trump says he thinks Putin wants to make a deal for Trump, not out of wanting to end the war, not because Trump was tough on him, but because Putin wants to do it out of the goodness of his heart because he just likes Trump, which isn't how Putin operates. But Trump seems to believe it, and that should be concerning because it means that Trump likely has bought what Putin is selling hook, line, and sinker. But it does get us to the meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky this weekend at the White House, which was a very different meeting from the one that Trump had with Putin. Trump forced Zelensky to come to him at the White House. There was no red carpet. There was no private ride with the president in the presidential limo. There was no military flyover. There was a short handshake outside of the door and then straight into the Oval Office for a press conference. And that press conference carries a bunch of tension with it because earlier this year, in case you forgot, the president shouted and pushed Zelensky in the Oval Office. And in that meeting, a very pro-Trump TV host criticized Zelensky for not wearing a suit. And so this time around, Zelensky did wear a suit. It was also the meeting in which J.D. Vance accused Zelensky of not saying thank you to the president. So Zelensky started this press conference by immediately saying thank you to avoid another blow-up. Now, in this press conference, Trump was asked if there was no deal with Ukraine and Russia after the meeting he was about to have with Zelensky and other European leaders, if it was the end of the road for U.S. involvement in the war in Ukraine. And Trump said no, but then said a really weird thing.
I think we have a good chance of doing it. It's been almost 4 years now that a lot of people were killed last week. A lot of people last week. I mean, millions of people killed, but a lot of people last week for whatever reason.
For whatever reason, it's insane. Trump knows exactly why those people were killed, and it was because his Alaskan buddy wants more Ukrainian land and more dead Ukrainians. And also, in Putin's mind, Ukraine isn't a real country, so Ukrainians aren't real people because they can't exist, because Ukraine doesn't exist. And I know that bit of really tortured logic there is hard to understand. Don't think too hard about it. It's not really supposed to make sense. It's a flimsy way of thinking meant to sound like reason, but really, there's no way to make sense out of mass murder, which is what Putin is doing. Zelensky, though, asked again for U.S. and European leaders to help end the war. He said he was open to a bilateral or trilateral summit for a lasting peace.
So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. We will do our best for this. I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war.
And I think this exchange was important too, because you'll notice that Zelensky felt the need to play to Trump's ego there, that it was Trump who would be the arbiter of diplomacy, even though he was clearly manhandled by Putin over the weekend. But also Zelensky wants a diplomatic end to the war, which means a ceasefire. And again, that's the thing that Putin said he won't agree to and that Trump just sort of dropped after meeting with him. But maybe the biggest thing that happened in this meeting with Zelensky was Trump's answer to this question.
Vladimir Putin mentioned that the war will not end without addressing the root causes of this war. Have you had an understanding what are the root causes of this war?
Well, look, the war is going to end. When it ends, I can't tell you, but the war is going to end, and this gentleman wants it to end, and Vladimir Putin wants it to end. I think the whole world is tired of it, and we're going to get it ended. It was, I've done...
Not answering that would appear to say that Trump doesn't understand the root cause of the war. He can't answer the question. It's sort of like last week when he was asked about why he was going to meet Putin in Alaska, and he said he wanted to understand where things were at and where we are with the war. which implies that he doesn't understand what's happening with the war right now, despite getting weekly, if not almost definitely daily updates about what's happening. But to actually answer the question, what are the root causes of the war, when Putin says it, he thinks that Ukraine belongs to Russia. Ukrainians see that and are in a fight for their survival, and Trump doesn't appear to have an answer for that. And that, for Ukraine and Europe, is a troubling sign, because if the man that they know they have to appease to broker an end to the war doesn't know where square one is, how are they supposed to expect him to lead them to the finish line? It's the question here. Now, since that meeting, Zelensky has reiterated that he's ready for a bilateral meeting with Russia, which would cut out the U.S. from that summit. The German chancellor drew a line in the sand, saying Ukraine couldn't and wouldn't give up land to Russia, saying the piece of Ukraine Russia currently thinks it has a claim to would be like the U.S. giving up Florida. And Russia launched 270 more drones, 5 ballistic missiles, 5 cruise missiles, amounting to at least 441 more airstrikes into 3 different locations in Ukraine, killing 21 people, including 2 children, and injuring 99 other people, again, with no threat of consequence from the U.S. All of that has happened since Trump met with Zelensky over the weekend. So for as much as Trump wants to look like he had a successful weekend in these talks, we're nowhere near moving the needle on stopping the war, something Trump said he would do on day one. And time is now running out for people in Ukraine who now have to count on Donald Trump, a man who welcomed their attacker with open arms. All right. That is it for today's show. Please rate and review on whatever podcast app you listen to it on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment if you're a watcher on YouTube. Sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack. It's just $5 a month to get access to all sorts of bonus content. And as always, share the show on social media. It's Mims Newspod. That's MIMS Newspod, all one word, on every platform. I am at Granthermes on X and Bluesky, and at Granthermes TV on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Granthermes, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.